Again, welcome. Thanks for being here. You're probably like, what is this night about? Well, you're in the right place. You're going to find out. And I'm super glad that Father Parrish took time out of his busy schedule to be with us, and he's going to open us in prayer.
So today is the solemnity of the Annunciation, which means this is Jesus' conception day. So and we celebrate conception, not just birthday. Beautiful name itself. We're just going to ask for the descent of the Holy Spirit to come upon us, upon Our Lady, and upon the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy Father, we ask that you send your Holy Spirit upon us through your Son Jesus. Give us just joy in our hearts tonight, to be able to have eyes for our future, hope in our hearts for what you have to give us. Help us to receive it with open hands. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Conception doesn't really float your boat. Just so you know, today is also the day that the ring was destroyed in Lord of the Rings. Today is a great day. Okay. Again, welcome. Thanks for being here. Just an outline of the evening and what it's all about. We are going to have time for Q&A, and that is a major part of this, just to get your own input, voice. But there's kind of three tasks that we're about here tonight. So number one is really reminding ourselves and highlighting what we're doing right now, our current strengths, and that we're actually doing them really, really well, and that they're naturally in alignment with something. And we're going to name that as classical liberal arts. And you may have a lot of different conceptions of what that means, different associations, connotations. We just want to level set this evening. And again, say, hey, these are strengths of ours, let's name it. And maybe it can actually be a really great differentiating factor for us going forward. And then again, finally, we'll gather input from you all with a Q&A, and then there will be a survey for you to take that. If people are online too, you can take it. If parents were not here tonight, they can still participate in offering their voice. So we'll go through how we got to this point. Father's going to outline some non-negotiables during this process for us. Again, what's kind of core to our mission, despite maybe some external changes, but what is going to stay the same here at St. Al's. We'll talk about core principles of classical liberal arts. Again, trying to break those words down as much as possible and get some of the nuance there. And then Q&A and survey. So how we got here, first of all, I say this every time we talk, but we're one of the oldest institutions in Seattle. And that's pretty cool. To be founded in 1907, to still be here. But any organization that lasts for over 100 years, it requires reinvention. It requires innovation. And the church in general, right, to last for over 2,000 years, it also requires innovation and reinvention. It requires councils. It requires saints to call it back to mission. And our local church is in this period right now as well. And Partners in the Gospel, probably heard that term thrown out. If that is a new term for you, what that means is our parish is trying to reconfigure what we do in the context with other parishes. So we're partnered with St. John's over in Greenwood, St. Benedict over in Wallingford, and we're working our way towards becoming one parish family. Okay, retaining our schools, but how does each school kind of manifest its charism or its identity within this parish family context? So it actually provides a really great opportunity for us to then, again, look at our core strengths, what are we doing well, and then to elevate those, really call them out. And that's what every school should be doing right now. Again, you'll see that the themes from tonight, we're building on momentum that we've been setting the groundwork for 3 to 4 years ago. I'll talk about curriculum adoptions that we've made that teachers have bought into, and we're starting to see real cool results. And tonight we're going to be naming those results. But an important question is, Seattle, I said the state of the school, not a super Catholic place. In fact, a couple of years ago, it was rated as the #1 least religious major metropolitan in the entire United States. Yet we have these amazing Catholic schools, okay? And there are a lot of them, especially in our area. You can't throw a rock without hitting one. It's like, we don't want St. Al's to get lost in the mix here. So what do we do that is different, that can actually stand out and endure for another 100 years? So I want to share this tidbit. You may have noticed this big honking trophy here. This is our third academic decathlon first place trophy that we just took home from. Cool. And we had a teacher who just went to an Archdiocese-wide standardized testing training. It's called MAP training. Your students just did MAP testing in the winter. They do it in the fall. They're going to do them again in the spring. And the assistant superintendent for academic excellence for the Archdiocese came and found our teacher, and she grabbed her by the shirt. I wanted to know that. But it's like, what are you doing at St. Alphonsus? Okay, what are you doing? We can't beat you in the academic decathlon. And also, what you really wanted to approach our teacher about was like, your MAP scores, you're blowing all the other schools out of the water. And this, we just got shared, and I know this doesn't exactly look in a graphical form as blowing out of the water, but these are the percent, the median achievement percentiles for math and reading, and I've aggregated these for grades 1 through 8. You see we're 5 points higher for math, 6 points higher for reading, and you know this is significant. And the Archdiocese is scratching their heads like, what are they doing? And why are you seeing increasing scores while other schools are seeing kind of stagnation? And I like to think of this as guessing Space Jam. And they go into halftime and they're getting absolutely demolished. God's just like, oh, I got the secret stuff. Right? Well, what's inside the secret stuff? It's water. Like what we're doing here at St. Al's, it's not rocket science. It is just best practice. It is good teaching. And that's what classical liberal arts is. And what we want to do for our community and for ourselves is to name it as such. So I want you to know that's an important point. This is not anything radically new. And I invite Father Parrish to come back up. Talk about, again, our non-negotiables as we go through this process. What needs to stay the same?
So this goes into overall parish mission, right? So the new parish we will have altogether basically goes all the way up to technically 85th, right? All the way down to the canal, and all the way over to I-5. That's it's like First Avenue North, but basically I-5, right? It's a large area of North Seattle. And we need to be able, in my experience as the pastors, to be able to provide an educational experience that is going to be open to people who actually live here. And Nick brought up, for example, the predominantly non-religious context that we live in, right? So let me just kind of talk about that part, because this is the front portion of town. So in my own history, look, I wasn't raised Christian. I went to my entire education was Catholic, right? Except for the period of like pre-K and kindergarten, which I went to these like crazy, beautiful, and hilarious experimental kindergartens that looked like they came from the Big Lebowski. Anyway, that's the scene from Maud's studio. That was like my kindergarten. But the point, yeah, watch the movie, you'll understand. So, but I was brought into something really beautiful, right? From this experience of going as a non-Christian, going to Catholic school. Okay? For example, was it in 6th grade we take, it was like 7th when I was in, but 6th grade we take Washington State history? 7th, okay, so 7th. You know what my teacher did? This guy, he is a preeminent historian for Seattle. His name is David Berg. And he wrote several books on Chief Seattle, etc. But he took us all the way back to the Spanish experience of religiosity, colonization of Mexico and the conquering of the Aztecs to help us understand how Washington came to be. We're like, wait a minute, how were the Spanish here? Great, right? Spanish came here first, or any of the Americans or the English, right? And he gave us this whole world context of where we came from. Before that, I had no grades, right? Like I had horrible grades.
It was the only class that I was able to perform because he gave the whole picture, he gave the context. But you had to start from somewhere. You had to start from somewhere and chart a purpose. And that, if it wasn't for Mr. Brady, right, I actually wouldn't be here today, right? He was the one who was basically helping me see that, like, the world is interesting and beautiful. You have a part in it, right? And you can discover things, right? So move forward, look at it, understand. But it starts from somewhere. It starts from somewhere. This kind of experience is like that Mr. Bird gave me, just as a simple seventh grade teacher, was what allowed me to have an experience later on, especially of saying yes to being like a captain, right? When I was in the military, in the Navy. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here, basically. It's really my point. The thing is that our Catholic schools are a front porch. We're front porch for people who are non-religious. What is the house? The house is the church, right? We have the dining room, we have the living room, we have the kitchen, we have a place to live. But what is the place where, like, what's the easiest place to build that trust with individuals? On the front porch. Having a beer with your neighbor on the front porch. Building that trust. Catholic education is the method by which we do that. It's the most open-ended ministry we have in the parish. The other thing about that is that if I'm looking around at the non-religious individuals within Ballard and all of our zip codes as a combined family, the thing that I am curious about is this: what does my faith as a Catholic, have to give to somebody who has no faith? Now, I believe there is, right? Because I received it. I received Mr. Brady's faith, at least the fruit of it. And that's the thing we have to give away. We have an ability to give away the fruit of our faith in order to make an experience of trust, to propose something radically new and beautiful. And granted, this is a free offer, so there's no compulsion in that, right? No one has to be a Catholic. And that's the whole point. I want to be able to have a school where I can propose, like, the fruit of my experience, my faith, to, and how we see the world as whole people, as Catholics, that is going to be attractive and inviting for a non-Christian. I want non-Christians to experience rest and joy, because that is something that is huge dividends down the road on that product. And I believe that a change in the way that we're kind of having our model of teaching, having the like slight change at this point, is only minor, our curricula, will be the best way to do it. So, accessibility. Accessibility is tied into that. And the accessibility part is twofold. One is that I want non-Christians to feel like they have access to this experience, right? You need to be able to have access to this. So we want to be able to propose something that they're able to connect to. Okay? So what is beauty? What is truth? What is goodness? These are things that are human. They're human. You don't need to be religious to notice beauty. You don't need to be religious to understand truth. You don't need to be religious to see and experience and feel goodness. I want our curricula to be able to reflect those things, to be able to bring students and families into that at a place where it's accessible for them, not accessible for us. The next thing is, and the second component to that is also in the long term, being able to build in, for example, like economic the financial models that are going to be able to help people financially at a greater degree. But that's a different conversation. But granted, that's in my purview. Like, Catholic education, we said it used to be free. It was never free, right? We had legions, sisters, who gave their entire life, right? It wasn't paid in money, it was paid in blood. It was paid in a life, which is good and beautiful, but it wasn't free. We just have a different way of having to pay for it now. But that's something we have to take account of in the future. The next one is fully alive. I was talking about truth, good, beauty, and goodness. Truth, goodness, and beauty. I have this experience, and Nick and I have an odd experience of sharing in the same education. We went to university together. I don't know how many of you know that, but we were he's quite a bit younger than me because I was in the military when I finally got to college. I was older. But he and I had the same experience with liberal arts education, right? We both went to Gonzaga before they took away their core, which don't get me started, but I have strong feelings. Anyway, but we were opened up as young men to this experience of being able to see the world with joy, interest, and excitement. Joy, interest, and excitement. How many people in your daily life have an experience of joy, interest, and excitement when they look out at reality? Very minimal, right? We want to be able to hand that on. That's what it means to be fully alive. But that comes from, for example, from our context as educators, as a pastor, as a principal, as teachers, of being fully ourselves as Catholics. Our faith in Jesus, in his presence in the world, allows us to look at reality positively. That the Lord can do something beautiful. It allows us to keep a vision upon reality in a positive way, instead of descending into negativity and pessimism. One way I like to put this is that when somebody comes into this trust and relationship with Christ, it renews their humanity because, number one, Jesus is also human. So he renews humanity. But the thing is that it gives that soul, that person, an ability to rest, knowing that it doesn't have to take on all of life on its own. To not take on all of life on its own. There's somebody there that's way more powerful and that's able to change evil into good, or use evil even for the purposes of good, etc. So what ends up happening in that context is that I don't have to blind myself to what's happening, and I can remain interested. It's no longer terror up there. It's possibility and opportunity and hope, even in the darkest places. And so, fully alive, it comes from our Catholicity. But it's a Catholicity, religiosity that is oriented towards people who are not religious, right? In the sense it's for them, right? Come experience the fruit that I experience. I give my fruit away to you freely, without any payment, as it were. Not a subscription service. Here, have it for free. Here's the fruit of my faith for free, which is an ability to be human. So fully alive is code language for we are still Catholic. We're coming at this from a Catholic, solid and secure and free Catholic position, right? Orientation towards life and reality. But it's something that is deeply accessible for everybody, and it's able to help bring people to a place where they can rest with us on this front porch. And the next slide. Oh, great. Oh, you put it right there. All right, cool. So the method by which we do this. Look, the way that culture tends to propose reality to us is by these snippets of images and multiplying them across our vision, right? One of my favorites is like when Neo goes and meets the architect, that whole wall, the architect's just sitting and looking at all the screens, right? The thing is that our culture proposes this kind of fragmented view of reality. You can't focus on one thing, right? And it keeps saying you have to see everything. You have to know everything. You have to do everything. You have to be good at everything. When you do that, when you start from that kind of place, you end up fragmenting your situation. You can't focus. And so what ends up happening is our own humanity, experience of life, gets more and more fearful. So we don't understand the whole anymore. Right? We can't see it well. So we start to kind of just shrivel up a little bit, as St. Augustine says in Latin, incurvatus se, curved in on oneself. And That's not what we want to be able to propose for our children. We want to be able to give them, yeah, an experience of seeing reality with joy and all this. So how do we do that? Have to start somewhere, right? The bottom image is actually of a keyhole. Literally, it's a door, the keyhole. And that keyhole points directly, it's on the Aventine Hill. It's right by the Basilica of Santa Sabina, Saint Sabina. And it's a garden. And in this door is that keyhole. It looks down a path and it looks straight on to St. Peter's Dome, the Vatican, right? It's from that one starting point, little keyhole, you're able to see beauty, goodness, and the beginning of the whole. Have to start somewhere with a particular proposal. And that's really the point. We have to start with a concrete, particular proposal for our kids to be able to see life well. We start with the smattering of everything is going to lead to fear and disengagement and disgruntlement, which we see in our culture. We have to start from where we've come from. Last thing I'll say about it is this, and this will come back later. The reason why we propose something is traditional. Isn't because we're a slave, right, to something that came from the past. It's because to know where I've come from means to know where the person behind me was standing. What is their orientation? Were they pointed north, south, east, or west? Because how they were pointed indicates to me the direction they were going. What am I building? If I don't know what came before me, the orientation of the person before me, how do I know where to start? I just become frozen in place. I need to be able to look with the confidence. Doesn't mean that I don't change course, I don't alter my course as I keep going. I'm not talking about like that kind of rigidity. We're talking about a place where we can know that and understand where we've come from so that we can see a better way of where we're getting to. And that's another place we're starting in a particular. Right? Start from where we've come from. That's part of the classic Catholic liberal education of what we're trying to like pose here. So I have one more. Oh, I'm just gonna keep going then. All right. The point is this. I didn't send that like these flurry of text messages. Put this in. Anyway, but so this is raise your hand if you know about Louis Sullivan. He's one of the greatest American architects. Oh, nice. Yeah. The art history professor. Yeah. Louis Sullivan is one of the greatest American architects ever. And this was his actual last project. It was like in 1920, right before he died. And it was for a bank in, was it Grinnell, Iowa. What does Grinnell, Iowa need with this kind of beauty?
College town.
Well, it's college town, but it needs beauty because it's regular people. Regular people need beauty, right? When we're proposing like this kind of way of looking at life, one thing I like to point out about this one piece of his is simply this, is that when you stand back and you look at it, you see the beauty of the geometry, right? You see the artistic, prowess that goes into it, the design prowess that goes into it. But then when you start zooming into it, for example, on the terracotta facade there, for the front entrance, you start seeing even more beautiful details. Basically, when you see something beautiful like this and harmonious, just like what we're proposing with this kind of educational model, you have a sense of hope and joy in life and reality. And when you start learning, like, okay, right, let's learn about geometry. Let's learn about the fundamentals of mathematics. Not just how to do them, but why. Why mathematics? Why arithmetic? Why geometry? Why algebra? Why? You start going into the why, you start appreciating these kinds of things more. And you can see reality better. So think of it this way. In 1999, what was the most important album that came out in 1999? It was Illmatic. Illmatic by Nas. Okay? And there's a song in here. New York State of Mind. I liked that song when I was growing up. Right? I was a freshman when that came out. I was in love with it. Right? Then, when I went to Gonzaga, and I learned about arithmetic and geometry and also about music, right? About how those two play together. I learned that that song is primarily, it was called the Phrygian tone, which comes from the ancient Greeks. There were modes that they were able to identify. That entire song is in the Phrygian because it makes you feel a certain way, right? And when I learned that, I love that song even more. What we're proposing is a love for life and reality that helps us bring us even deeper into what we experience. I think that's the last slide.
I'll try and take us from 32,000.
Yeah, sorry, buddy.
To the runway. Okay, so towards a definition, this is the longest intro you will ever hear about classical liberalism, about getting a definition of what the heck this thing is. So if I were to just put this in one phrase, it's this: classical liberal arts education aims to integrate all the subject areas: languages, math, history, arts, sciences, athletics, music, geometry, all of those into one coherent whole. What Father is getting at here. I mentioned at State of the School, I took this picture of Ms. Cintron's word wall. Thinking means connecting things. Classical education, classical liberal arts education is the best mode to connect things because it draws out the meaning. And again, when there's meaning, there's purpose, there's harmony, and you get those like rich aha moments and this sense of purpose that I think Father's getting at here. And I think they can, Sarah and Ms. Murphy and Ms. Van Halbeck over there can say when we walk into these classrooms, you know, you can have that palpable sense when kids are just in sync again with the reality of what they're learning. And that's fun. And we want more of it here. I mentioned at the beginning, okay, these connotations and these words, our language is, we have language deficits today, but liberal means not in the political sphere here, but liberal as in free. So the classical liberal arts are about freedom to be in relationship with truth. I can feel like I know facts, but also where the source of those facts come from. I'm inspired to be a good citizen, good person in my community, to be in relationship with that even further. And then beauty to actually step back and, as I said, to appreciate and have gratitude for it. And I think that's intergenerational, right? When you start to experience that at home with your kids as well. That's what we want to free kids for. It's not, classical education is not just being conversant with the past and reading old things and putting my little primer and playing the medieval fife. Father Parrish wanted to let people know that, you know, we want the electric guitar to be played here as well. You're conversant with the past, but you're also able to inhabit different perspectives by getting this broad exposure to cultures, religions, great texts that have endured time. And then you are then equipped, not just with what to think. We're going to tell you a lot of wonderful things to think about. And we're actually going to give you knowledge to chew on. But then you've had the skills to go out and like make decisions for yourself, think and to apply. That's the gist here. So where is classical education? If you know, I'm plugged in to the education trends and movements, so I've been aware of this for a long time. I realize this might be newsflash to you, but classical education is in all 50 states. It's in the urban areas, it's in rural areas, it's in affluent areas, it's in low income areas, private school, public school, charter schools, everywhere. And it's around the globe. There are today about 1,600 schools. That number is going to double in the next 10 years. It's doubled in the last 10. Because people are realizing that our kids need more and want to provide them with more. There are currently 3 classical schools in the Archdiocese of Seattle. None are in city limits. Seattle, so I actually think it's an interesting opportunity for St. Al's to occupy that space. There is one classical Christian school over on Capitol Hill, and you go onto the website, they're very clear. We're the only classical school in Seattle city limits. And again, like I said, I would like to stand side by side and make them have to change their website. That school in particular, I'll just throw out, they started with about 5 students. They're now K through 12, have about 200 students, and, waitlist. So there's interest in Seattle. Some core principles of classical liberal arts. Number one, it's knowledge rich. Again, I'm going to be rehashing things that you already know or reminding you of them. Okay, our curriculum is knowledge rich. It's primarily coming from our core knowledge, history and geography, our core knowledge, language arts programs in our early grades. And this web that you can't really make sense of, you just need to know that there's a lot of wonderful topics on there that is not being taught in other schools. Okay, first graders, they are learning about early river valley civilizations. They're also studying like the culture of Mexico. Tomorrow they're having Mexico Day, which is very cool. So they've studied the Aztec and the Maya, but then they're also studying the modern culture of Mexico. That's awesome. And it will start to build from grade to grade. Second grade, I always say they do the Greeks, but they also do Hinduism. They also do early India. They also do the modern culture of Japan. Third grade, they do Rome Day. You've probably seen all the togas. Okay, but they're also doing Native American civilizations. They do the Vikings. Fourth grade, they do medieval era. They do Mansa Musa. They do Africa. They do Islamic civilizations. Broad-based. Fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, it starts to spiral and go deeper. Knowledge rich too. We have room to improve on this too, but we want to try and select texts that align with what we're studying in the history class. So if we are studying kind of Renaissance era, we might be, or afterwards, we might be reading some Shakespeare. We might be reading some Don Quixote. These are abridged versions, of these texts. However, we're whetting their appetite to go delve into those unabridged versions later on. But we're also giving them access to cultural literacy, the greater conversation, as it were. When they read Don Quixote, they can come away and tell you what it means to tilt at windmills. Or when they read Julius Caesar, what it means to cross the Rubicon. Like these phrases and terminology might even be lost to us, but these are phrases that we need to recover and that our kids can participate in a concrete way, which I think is awesome. Secondly, core principle of classical liberal arts is teacher-led instruction. More and more people are realizing, Morgan was just telling me, Facebook, Google lost a big lawsuit today about the impact of social media and screens and all of the rest on, our kids' well-being. There's going to be a shift back into that. Let's leave screens out as much as possible. And this is just good best practice. The ed tech industry it's a stupid, sick monopoly on the education industry. And we're fed like, hey, have you tried this ed tech game or computer, whatever, wherein you read the academic research papers and journals. Best practice is what you and I experience. I'm not that old, but like teacher-led instruction in the front of the room, discussion, okay, cracking open real books rather than scrolling on the iPad. That stuff works. And Miss Murphy likes to point out too, what also works is being outside, going out and doing recess. I can't tell you how many families we give tours to in middle school age. Like, wait, your middle schoolers do recess? Like, that doesn't happen in some of these other public schools. And that's a key part of classical liberal arts is leisure, is free time. You got to let your mind relax so you can take in more information later and then digest it. So we value play. That's not going away. We're not going to create some automaton who can recite, Homer for you. That'd be cool. And then finally, part and parcel to this whole method is the formation of virtue. So it's not just the intellect, but it is the heart. So you've heard us do virtue of the month. We give our students the week based on the virtue of the month. You see our house captains, lieutenants write out, some nice little reflections on these virtues. Virtue of the month is mercy. All of us can tell you that's caring for those who are suffering. We had an excellent demonstration of that virtue this morning, which we processed around the block. People in Ballard thought that they were in a time warp. Okay. But to stand in solidarity, right, with school in Minnesota, we want that to be baked in what we do at St. Al's. That's It's naturally embedded in classical liberal arts. I'm going to get a little bit more into the weeds or the roots here. Because people might be like, well, what does it actually look like in the classroom? What are the stages of classical liberal arts education? Again, back to the superintendent who's like, what are you doing here at St. Alphonsus? Well, we're very, very intentional about cultivating the foundation. So this is traditionally called the grammar stage, okay? But you just need to know that this is learning foundational knowledge, vocabulary, handwriting, math facts, spelling, phonics, orthography, which your kids probably despise. However, it is what is so good for them. And concreteness is songs and chants and yes, memory word memorizations. Well, that's a bad word, but no, that's actually best practice. They will retain so much and be actually freer to apply their concepts later on if they master some of these things. So that's kind of that preschool elementary age. Then you move up. Okay, this is loosely middle school, kind of 7th and 8th grade, but they're starting to explore relationships between facts, cause and effect. They're digging into primary sources more for the first time. They're spotting logical fallacies. If your middle schoolers like to ask questions, we try and capitalize on that in class discussion. And at the top, this rhetoric stage, associated more with high school, but we're definitely dipping our toe into that in their earlier grades in middle school, but learning how to read, write, speak, think, really prioritizing just being a good writer. Your side of writing, which is hard, it's even harder for me. Applying analytical tools in a more complex way, and again, starting to inhabit different perspectives. And that's possible when you're reading some really great literature. For kids, like, hey, this may not be my own personal experience, but I can apply this later on. I saw a good one the other day, like reading Dostoevsky or Homer, like how does that prepare you for everyday life? Like how does bench pressing help in the middle of a basketball game? Like it definitely you're not going to do it then, but the reps that you're doing are preparing you, right? The complex work, the intellectual work that you're doing, and the thoughts that you're being exposed to, you never know when that's going to be relevant. Want to give those kids the opportunity. Some of this looks like, sounds like, even tastes like. I personally think if you're able to take a sip of classical liberal arts and find when people didn't know what they were having, to be like, what is that? Like, I want that. That should be what I'm having with my kids. It looks like, sounds like these are things that I put in the primer, but integrated curriculum we talked about. We want to try and have our students, so what they're reading, they're also studying in history. We did Pi Day in middle school, so yes, the number pi, they're drawing it, they're calculating it, also studying about the background and where that came from. That's an integrated curriculum. Really neat. Virtue formation, talk about songs, poems, nursery rhymes. This explicit instruction in phonics, handwriting, math facts, minimal screens, things we've covered. But having an aesthetic environment, you'll notice that the last couple of years, we put up the hallway art on either side. Okay, so your kids are not just looking at Cathedral of Notre Dame, but they're looking at Mesa Verde. They're looking at the Taj Mahal. They're looking at different cultures because beauty resonates across cultures, not just one particular. We want to make history come alive. I mentioned the culture of Mexico is being celebrated tomorrow. There are Greece days, Rome days, medieval days, Pi days. We would like to see more discussion. Discussion can be really healing. Sometimes kids don't feel like they have a voice or know how to articulate that. That process in itself can draw out things that kids didn't know that they had inside. The narrative arc, so being able to teach history in the context of story, this is something I'd like us to get better at, so that they can actually see the common thread. So I have this vision of having like timeline charts throughout the entire hallways, which would look really ridiculous, but you can just walk down and just see where we're at through time. emphasis on wonder, math and science. And I'll talk a little bit more about math and science. I think sometimes people feel like this gets left out. When in reality, it's like we had robotics today. Okay, those kids are loving it. Got Lego Club. We want to continue to let these things rise to the surface because kids need them, and they actually are enhanced by the study of the grammar and the writing, because they're developing those intellectual tools, those analytical tools to get really good at the sciences. Importantly, what are teachers thinking about this? I did a presentation last week for our staff, just to tell them, hey, this is the direction that we're headed. How do you feel about it? And reminding them too that a lot of this stuff has been in place for some time. About 80% of teachers said yes, classical liberal arts. Okay, we had really good discussion about, hey, maybe some of those words we're uncomfortable with, and we need to kind of break apart some of those associations, and that's legitimate and important, and I'd like to do some of that tonight. How are parents going to buy in? How am I going to support students with diverse needs? And we'll talk about that. Those were some major concerns that our teachers had, but about 80% responded positively to this movement of this method. The main reasons that they called out, again, we're already implementing many of these elements. Number two, it aligns with best practice. To me, that's very telling. Number three, it provides a clear and coherent academic vision. So if we're not just, what are we going to do today? I'm going to get on teachers pay teachers and interest and figure out what pops up. No, like we know what we're teaching next and why. Number four, it distinguishes our school. Teachers realize that, yes, it is a competitive landscape out there. We need something that says, yeah, I work at St. Al's. Let me tell you why it's different, why you should send your kids here. Work with us. Okay, some graduate outcomes of classical education. The University of Notre Dame is known for doing big sociological studies. In 2020, they did a report comparing 24 to 42-year-old graduates of classical, public, private, charter, just your standard Catholic school. And they wanted to see how these graduates compared on different categories: life choices, preparation for careers, general attitudes, values, opinions, etc. Okay. There are some interesting results from this study. And they found, and I can include this just in the notes that I send out tomorrow if you want to dig a little bit more deep. But graduates of classical schools are actually more likely to trust scientists. You may have heard a lot of that in the headlines. No one trusts scientists. More likely to disagree publicly. More likely to know elected officials and to volunteer in their community. More likely, 6.7 times more likely to be active readers. More likely to have friendships with people of different backgrounds and beliefs. They do have the highest SAT scores, both reading and math. And you can look at kind of the different percentage breakdowns, but I think this does a nice job of just capturing who this profile of graduate is. I feel like I keep coming back to this, and Father does a great job of talking about this, but if classical liberal arts, we may have in our minds that this is narrow, when in fact what we're trying to do is open up to something broad, to open up to something that's universal. And I love reminding folks that Catholic, lowercase c Catholic, does mean universal. Yeah, we did a procession today, and we had students wearing white altar server robes. We had a priest who's carrying a statue of Mary around Ballard. Okay, that's big C Catholic. Okay. And we just shattered some people's, world. They had no idea what was going on. However, okay, we invited them into a universal experience nonetheless. And we're able, and we want to continue to prioritize broad exposure to religions, cultures, because it truly does. It develops empathy, develops not just informed citizens, but respectful citizens as well. And I truly think it helps develop an appreciation for our own faith. Helps our own kids eventually when they go back Like I can start to see why my own faith stood out here. Equity and accessibility. I understand that there might be concerns like, man, this sounds rigorous. Like, is my kid going to be left behind? How are they going to be able to do this? Primary reason why we adopted Core Knowledge was because its mission is that every child in a diverse democracy deserves access to enabling knowledge. So that means it's a justice issue if we do not give kids foundational concepts, if we do not give kids broad-based knowledge. That's an equity. So the kids need explicit instruction in these things because that's how we close the gaps. I tell families too on tours, a lot of times you'll see us slow down to go fast. We'll slow down with those fundamentals in reading, writing, math, etc. So these students can actually feel equipped and freer to go faster in these later grade levels. And this one is also really important to me. Classical education as holding ourselves and as a community and even as a nation accountable to high standards in providing healing across different cultural divides. So that gal on the left down there is Dr. Angel Parham. I got to do a class with her a couple of years ago, and she's a professor at the University of Virginia. And she co-wrote this book a couple of years ago with Annika Prather, who's a professor at Howard University, historically Black college. And they defend tooth and nail classical education and that we all should read the classics. And their main argument is that these works, okay, the classics, great books, these works were the ancient teachers that Black leaders used to hold our nation accountable, the standards that we pointed toward, but so often failed to uphold. Great books can heal cultural divides. That's why all people should know and love the classics. So their book, they outline these different authors that, frankly, we should read more of. It's not just MLK, it's not just Frederick Douglass, it's, Phyllis Wheatley, it's W.B. Du Bois, characters like these that were raised in a classical education setting and truly did amazing things for a nation because they were drawing upon the principles in classics, okay, in those great works, and to lead our country, individual groups to flourishing. And sometimes I think that can get lost, but a very important element of what we want to accomplish. Next, with humanities and STEM, I think a lot of people think these may be diametrically opposed. When you hear liberal arts, you hear of just like unemployed English majors working at Starbucks. But I just wanted to ask if anyone could call out maybe what the liberal arts actually are. I'll give you a hint, there are 7 of them. The hardest one first. Math. Math, yeah, there's 2 in math. Arithmetic and geometry. Arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, music, this one. And then those 3 I laid out at the beginning of those stages, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Okay. What's really cool about, so those first 3, I didn't think I was gonna get this detailed, but the first 3 are called the trivium, second half, or called the quadrivium. And those are like, that is STEM right there. Okay. Classical movement may not call that STEM necessarily, but that is essential to what this is about. Arithmetic is number in itself. Geometry is number in space. Music, number in time. Think of rhythm and beat. And astronomy, number in space and time. So you start to get a sense of why these things build on each other and how to see them. Yeah, it was really cool. So next time you're at trivia night. What we're trying to do, I alluded to earlier, not every kid is going to be taking calculus at St. House, not ours. And some of them may not take calculus in high school. However, we want to give them the analytical skills to be able to see the scientific world, in a way that's like not super abstract, that they can get down into it. And that helps when you're doing orthography and you're underlining phonograms and figuring out which rule the silent E is. That trains a kid's mind to how to think analytically, critically. Again, I said classical graduates have the highest SAT scores in both reading and math. That's from that Notre Dame study. And you see any Wall Street Journal, New York Times article, whatever, any employer today is saying we want well-rounded kids. Okay, those liberal arts, that is well-rounded, both in the humanities and STEM, not opposed, but together, very essential. Father?
There's just some stories here.
One thing I am going to say is even like the memorization part. When we're looking at our own experiences in life, we go through very difficult periods. What's the first thing to go when we go through very like pain and trial? Our thinking, right? When we have memorized something, like even prayer, it grounds us again. So, but as far as like STEM and this classical model, I want to point out these individuals. And also, I'm going to start from the very far right top picture. That is a diagram or a picture with all the creators in the moon. I know you can't read those names, but half of those are Jesuit priests. Reason being is because Jesuits were created right around the same time as the invention of the telescope. Right? What are the Jesuits at the time really super interested in? Anything in reality, because they came from their religious faith. What is life? What is this beauty that we see? How do we understand it? So they were some of the first ones to look at these smaller creatures and to start naming them after themselves because they couldn't think of any other name. RBA, great. So going to the left there is Louis Pasteur, right? He is the forefather of modern germ theory, pasteurization, et cetera, vaccinations, right? The reason why he was such a good scientist was because he was a devout Catholic. And one of the most interesting things, especially as far as germ theory is concerned, was the prevailing attitude of the day, or theory of the day in the academy, was very different than what we understand as, germ theory now. He was the first one to propose it. And they all laughed at him. They said, "You're crazy. This is nonsense." He kept in the game, looking at life, looking at the evidence, looking at reality in front of him because of his own religious faith. That's why he is such like a hero for us. Why many of us, including myself, are alive because of his faith. Mother Cabrini, right? Mother Cabrini, having this experience of faith in Christ and being loved by him, was able to set up an entire school system on her own. That's insane, right? It's insane. But it was just because of the presence of Christ in her life that she was able to do so. On the bottom far left here is Lemaitre, Father Lemaitre. He's the one who came up with the Big Bang Theory. He was a monk. And he was a phenomenal physicist. And in the middle is Mendel, Father Mendel. He is the father of biology, of particular genetics. Again, he was an Augustinian monk, right? These are individuals who are looking at life and looking at reality and seeing something, and they're interested because of their faith. And the last one is the oldest of all of these. Her name is Saint Angela Merici, right? She died in like 1540. But in the 1490s, she developed the first school system for girls in the world, right? And it was because of her faith in Christ. And brings all of these people all together? Their faith, but also their method of education. The method of their education is exactly what we're proposing. We have to understand that our current contemporary modern education comes from 18th or 19th century Prussia, modern day Germany / pseudo Poland, whatever. And the whole reason for it, let's not go into it. The whole reason for it was to create industrial workers and soldiers.
It's the only reason we have the Methodist education we have today in America. It was adopted by, I forget his last name, his first name, but man, in the 1830s. So yeah, we need this to have good, faithful citizens who are able to work hard and die in the trenches. That's the whole reason why we have our modern educational system. But that educational system doesn't lead to this beauty and this ability to look at life. So what we're proposing is no, we want our kids to be able to see things well and to be successful, but most importantly, to be happy. Be happy because it's that happiness and that hope that allows somebody to stay put, stay in life, stay in reality, and have hope and joy and discover something new. Being a cog in a machine does not allow you to discover something new. You're just going to get ground down. So I leave you with these stories, these individuals who are educated in the same way that we're proposing. It's tried and true, works, it's good, it's beautiful, and most importantly, it's just human. It's just human.
So next steps for what this could look like, and we're still working on this with Father Parrish, but this school year, making sure that we're getting the staff input, we really need to get your input on what this, your sentiment. And we also need to get Parrish family leadership sentiment on this. We're submitting an impact study, the Office for Catholic Schools. It's just part of the formal process. So this is a key milestone for us to be able to get your feedback on this proposal. We would like to, at the end of this school year, start to seek out some marketing and branding consultation on this, something probably outside of ourselves, probably people who, don't know the St. House context, who could give us some real good market data on how we present this to the outside world. 26, 27, I'm thinking this is like a soft launch where our staff really need to be in alignment to fully feel confident in what we're doing. Again, I think we're like 80% there, but I think there's some philosophical shift that needs to happen, and just some tightening of our framework. And I want our staff to feel really secure in this as well. 27, 28, potential formal launch. This is very rough draft, but this is the proposal, just for your own knowledge where we're headed. Finally, as Father alluded to, but I love being here at St. Alphonsus, and you know that. This is a gem, and it's such a gem that it deserves continual polish, and it deserves to be really shown not just to Ballard but to all of Seattle. And I see this place as just a hub to be a joyful 21st century Catholic classical liberal arts school that's for families of all backgrounds. I don't want that to be a narrow constraint for anyone, but this, as Father alluded to, the keyhole. Okay, it seems like this method, very distinctive it is, but this is a universal, has universal scope and application. So, thank you for listening. I would love to open it up just to give you some questions. And also, if you're on the Teams call, if you want to unmute, you can, or if you want to type something into the chat, Ms. Delgado could share that out for us. So, question, Olivia.
What subjects are going to change dramatically? That's the first question I get. And are we adopting an existing classical framework out there, or are we creating a new classical framework?
Great question. So to answer your first question, which subjects are changing dramatically? None. We're not adding new subjects. We're not deciding we're going to stop teaching science or anything like that. No, it's you saw our math scores, right? It's trying to do more of the same thing, just better, and continue to say like, hey, here are our best practices. How do we get even better at these things? The second part of your question is there a framework or a curriculum that, do we just go out and buy this and then all of a sudden we just do it? The answer is no to that as well. We've already adopted and are implementing quote unquote classical curricula. The curricula wouldn't identify itself as classical. Many classical schools use it. So our access literacy program, which I think is the reason why you see these excellent reading scores that are really talking about the fundamentals of post-construction with phonics, learning to spell first and then to read, because if you can spell a word, you can read it, not the other way around. That's classical in nature. Our FOSS science system, I think, is awesome because it's manipulative. It's not just learning definitions, but we're doing mealworm experiments right now in fourth grade, as you know. So we want kids up close and personal. Novel studies is something that we've been doing in middle school. I'd like to do more of. So it's we're not going out and buying new. If anything, I don't know what else to say there, but it's a lot of it's going to feel the same. But I think what will change differently, or what will feel different, is every teacher will now be able to actually articulate the why. I think they can do that for their own individual classroom, but I don't know if our teachers could do that collectively as a school. That's not a knock on our teachers, just that hasn't been set. Yes.
You mentioned there that you just need to buy and
Yeah. The main reservations, the top one that came up was concern about parent buy-in in understanding of what classical liberal arts means, and how that branding will work to this community, to the outside community. That was the top one. The second one was meeting the needs of students with diverse learning needs. And I think that's just a matter of education of our own staff. Like, our staff is crushing it. Like, in addition to just achievement scores, our growth scores for math, so kids who are growing from test session to test session, is also exceeding the Archdiocese norms. So those were the main concerns there. That really surfaced. I think some of those things that we pointed out, like, are we making sure that we're able to be universal in application, that we're able to still teach broad cultures and religions, as we're already doing in core knowledge, history, and geography. No, that's not going away. It's good. Yes, Tanya.
I have like 101 questions.
Okay.
Try to have like 2 or 3. So we heard a lot about front porch statistics and Ballard and Seattle and Catholicism. So then I read the pamphlet they handed out. Clearly one of the goals is for enrollment.
Yeah.
Okay. So what have we done within the community to understand that this is something? Because, as a parent for a smaller school, I would like to see both as well. Do we know that people are interested in this from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have not done a formal study on that. And I think a way to start to capture that, this is a good litmus test for us tonight. It's like, what is the sentiment here? Because if it's, one way or another, that's going to affect how we start to go out and talk to the outside community. If it's needing to provide educational sessions, if it's needing for us to pivot with language, that's still to be determined. I think I use that example of blind taste test. People are not going to be able to recognize right off the bat what classical and or liberal arts means, and if it's relevant to their child, unless they have an encounter or experience some sort of information on it. So I think that's a key piece. You're exactly right, Tanya, that I think we need to probably go to the parish family leadership team and talk about as well. And I think if there's momentum here within this current community, I think that's something we'd like to pull in from marketing, consultation. Like, how do we sort of situate this? Sure.
I was just gonna say, we're a new incoming family. We'll have a second grader next year, and I read the handout and was like, yes, this is why we're coming here. Seattle Public Schools do not do anything like this. Our children spend hours all day on a tablet. They are not learning spelling. And my son's class is gonna have a number of kids who personal options. I think parents do want their kids to learn, right? I think they can't learn on the screen all day. They can't learn when they don't know how to spell. They can't, read and write like we could about it. So I'm an N of one, but I know this is.
Get that on film right there.
Yeah, Stacy.
Geographic region, they don't.
It can't be capital.
No, I should know more. I don't know. But yeah, it is definitely not all of Capitol Hill. I would imagine it's gotta be a commuter
It
school.
wouldn't just be Ballard.
No, and I think that another reason why we're well positioned, we're along a main arterial 15. Like this is a place that we easily access, sort of. So no, I think it's a unique location to the office.
Can I ask a question as such, sort of comment, please? I want to separate out the curriculum, how you want to teach in the classroom, because all you described is kind of what we heard when Joe's saying a few years ago.
Yeah.
And so I don't think much of that has changed in reality. I'm really nervous about reaching the marketing message, because there's an awful lot baggage over the years with the term liberal arts. And you hear that term, it brings up different thoughts and things. I think I would worry to get filtered. So my wife went to a liberal arts college, and she took English and math. Took a degree. I mean, when she tells people that, the reaction is always, "You can do math?" And I know that's not reality, but there's certainly perceptions. So I'm very curious of how the outreach is going to go with the marketing and branding.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're selling is fantastic. You might lose a bunch of people that are trying to, hey, we want to define this term. You just spent an hour to explain to us what the heck this thing is. It's the second one's like digging into this. Because one of the things that kind of resonated with me, like the handout and like reading a little more about liberal arts, what it really is the world's changing so fast. When I'm looking at like an elementary school in particular, I am not preparing my kid for a job. I don't know what the world's going to look like by the time my kids are getting a good job, but I know it's not going to change. You gotta be able to think. You can be able to reason. Be able to question. You gotta be able to have all these analytical skills. And I think there might be something there in that message of we're preparing our kids with whatever the heck the world's going to look like in 15 years. Because if we just follow that, we just wasted the elementary ones.
Before you answer, I want to follow with like Craig's, because Craig and I entered the computer science field 30 years ago when computer science itself was pretty new. And a lot of what I saw at that time were people from across the entire broad spectrum. I worked with a physicist, I worked with an architect, I worked with an English major, and these were people.
I have an astronomer degree back. I worked with yes.
And with the world now feeling like everything is brand new in that way, raising our kids with an educational system that's not focused on one thing, but that is focused on allowing them to create connections and build that capability to rational is just, I feel like it's the most important thing.
But packing up in a concise message is going to be a real challenge.
Yeah, and that goes into Tanya, what you were saying. It's like my desire, like when I say front porch, I mean it. I like in that sense, like we need to be able to like on our marketing and then things like this, like we need to be able to have a method by which we communicate this that is going to be attuned to the current phone. right? That's really important. And it's going to be, faithful to like what we're doing, but also inviting. I got a lot of questions on this too, as well. There's other things like you want me to execute and I can execute, but how, like, I told Nick this morning, like, or yesterday, like, we were walking through this. I'm like, okay, I know we don't have exactly the language we want to use here, but I don't want to die in the ditch of language quite yet, even though it's massively important later on. But
It seems like you're trying to teach them how to think versus what.
100%. Well, sorry about the point, but 100%. Yeah, because I really do believe, like, look, inside of the human person is a massive ability to live and learn in reality, and like humans we have like a huge capacity that's not tapped most of the time because it's usually sucked into, frankly, being a consumer. We're trying to go along with like a workforce, but to be able to actually say, no, this is my dignity, goodness, and beauty. This is how I can think and see in life and reality. It stabilizes people, right? It allows them from that stability to actually become creative, right? So creativity comes from that kind of tradition and stability. It doesn't create like narrow-mindedness in that context. How do we communicate that? It's going to be a fun challenge.
I have two more questions, and I know we're probably over time, but one, are we doing this in the other two parish family schools, or is it just there?
Unique to St. House.
And why, Only?
I think we're building on what we're currently doing already. The other schools, great schools, just, I don't think this is in their water necessarily. I think we are uniquely poised because curriculum is there, the teachers understand what the curriculum is and why we're doing it. I think it's now starting to give them the bigger picture, but now we're nimble enough to do it. And yeah, we're just, like I said, it's just a couple more notches to actually name it. Yeah, doing that.
And it is like, in just timeline wise, look, when I got here, I'm pastor of 3 churches and 3 schools, right? I asked all the principals, I need you to like pray into what is the charisma of your school, right? So like, and what that means is like, what is the grace of the Holy Spirit that he's giving each school? And so it kind of started rising to this because Nick had been here for 4 years, 5 years, 5, yeah. Like he has this desire, it's kind of been building up bit by bit, just kind of came out that way, basically. So it was like kind of particular to the place and also to my request about we need to be differentiated in our ministries. So.
Yeah, second question.
I do. What would you describe like a student who's trying to succeed in this type of setting, and either based on statistics or based on your own experience and knowledge, and the student who most likely has the most difficult in this type of teaching?
Yeah, I think I tried to highlight that we want to catch all learners here, that this is not, we only take one type of kid. I think traditionally, and when Melissa is giving tours, she's like, we're able to do small batch education for kids and tailor instruction to them. So for those kids who are maybe who struggle in some ways, maybe they've got gaps coming in from other schools that didn't get closed. Maybe they do have a learning difference. I think the method of instruction, because it is so explicit and so foundational, helps close those gaps. So those struggling kids, this is the place that they should be. And I'm not trying to pad MAP scores or anything like that. Like, we want those kids, because I've seen it. Any teacher could tell you the progress that they've seen of those kids who are in that bottom quartile and moving up to the top right quartile, which is amazing. So struggling kids, yes. Kids who are just hungry for more, 100%, the depth in which that they'll be able to go, the quality of the literature that they can read. Sports aren't going away. So I don't know what to tell you in terms of education, that this is not going to be for a particular kid. obviously the family has to buy into it, and by extension, their kid will. But I really think, again, back to that point, it's small batch, and we truly are able to capture a wide swath.
Personal testimony. I have 2 major learning disabilities. I mean, it was part of the reason why I was so bad. I mean, I got sent out of schools because of my behavioral problems also as well. But anyway, at the time though, the Catholic school system was like the most helpful system that we have in Seattle to be able to deal with and to have a personalized outlook on this. But it wasn't until like that 8th grade teacher and came back in the military, in the Navy with the priest, that brought me into the faith. It was like the ability to ask me a question to like, how are you seeing this? What are you understanding? Right? It's like really personalized in this way. Like formal term is Socratic method. Now, granted, it's a little bit, I don't know what this, I'm not the educator here. So I can't say what the Socratic method looks like for a 3rd grader, granted. But the point is that like my 8th grade teacher was, and like the priest who brought me in, and then later on my professors at Gonzaga were able to help me ask the right questions about what I was seeing. Because like the way that I learned was from a contextual view in, whereas other friends of mine we learned from the particular out. Right? And then there are other people that have a super different way of looking at life and understanding it. The reason I bring this up is because hopefully, right, I really like the question, who isn't this for? It's a great question. My hopeful answer is this is for everyone. That there shouldn't be somebody that this isn't for. And also, what I'm really kind of hopeful for also is that this is also not dependent on like IQ, like by natural processing power, right? Because like wisdom and understanding my life is applicable to anybody, regardless of how fast they can process the information. Yeah. Some comments. Question.
And I resonated deeply with your story about your contract on American newspaper and inspired me to go to the Library of Congress in Washington, that's available to look up original documents on being medieval because he thank you hired me to do that because he was engaging and he loved the topic and he taught it from a true point. He's like, I'm going to teach you who are the slave owners holding on your dollars. This is from college, right? But also, you know, he appreciated the American history with warts and all for what it is. He approached it from that angle. She was a history nerd, like his wife and him married on the getting for battle. The passion that he had is Brian Voss at the Northern Virginia Community College, right? So I'm telling you, do not underestimate like one teacher's ability to like change a lot. So I just wanted to chime in with that story. It's hugely meaningful, and I learned so much more than just kind of what I would have learned in lecture or whatever. Reading some textbook, you know, this is really inspiration to go out there and be like, I need these documents because I'm going to write like a paper that I didn't want to write. Like I took it as an elective. It really wasn't that I, you know, so, no, love your story. And I don't think you should underestimate the teachers.
We have questions on the.
They were both answered. The first question was about the 20% of staff who were not in favor of the change. What were the reasons for this and whether those concerns were alleviated through discussion? And the second question, or it was more of a comment, it's unfortunate, this is where my mind goes, but given the divisiveness of the country, I would encourage when doing marketing research to explore how this is labeled and if liberal is the best option, given the lack of understanding around what it means and where some people's minds may automatically go.
Yeah, agreed. We talked about liberal arts, we talked about classical, like my thought goes to when people are scrolling on Instagram and they've got 0.3 of a second to make a snap judgment. I want them to know that St. Al's is different, it stands out, and I think a name does matter. It takes, as you mentioned, an hour to explain this, but we have to figure out a way where it's apparent from the get-go that we do something different. Then we can go deeper. So naming matters, just acknowledging the truth of that comment. Yeah. Yep, Morgan.
Liberal arts can be hot button, whatever. I think what would be a little bit less hot button is kind of backdoor the same result, the same like have this free. It's because like we're a low screen school, that's why we're here. It's like, hey, probably not one reason. And I think that if you really, because like saying screen free is not practical. We have some access, that's fine. But focusing on that, I think we get a lot of positive feedback from people because, I mean, I was in my kids' class every week and it was just hours of iPad time at SPS. And that was the primary reason we left. And so, and that it's not here and it's great.
I mean, I thought your description of classical education and like you had some bullets on the sheet you sent out, like, again, we're not a family here yet, we're starting next year. That to me, I was like, I get it. I know what this is and this is what I'm missing. So I don't know how you brand that, but that didn't take an hour. It took me a minute to read. I
Or even
put a document.
saying to use spelling. SPS. Sixth grader math, it's spelling it.
Maybe more teaching less that.
And also the teacher led is a really big difference. Like the teachers in SPS don't have that ability now to do teacher led learning.
Sorry, to connect these two, to connect these two comments.
It's good.
We can hear you.
Okay. Is basically is that, you know, one thing I have a very strong thing about like teaching is that, you know, you teach what you love. You're one to give away the thing you love, right? Like that, I mean, even as parents, like that's what ends, you know, like what is the most beautiful experience of parents? To give away the things you love most, right? Bring your kid into that, give that away to them. And that's what a teacher does. And so like teacher-led experience is going to be huge for us because like when an individual teacher brings a student into like, hey, this is the thing that I find like I just get jazzed about all the time, right? That is so infectious for the student. Right? Yeah, for the young mind to be able to see in a new way. And also to be able to like tweak it too, right? Also, because one of the things I always love saying is this: that you always have like one of the biggest travesties we can do is to not give our children something to rebel against, at least. If you don't make a proposal, what do you rebel against, right? That's actually a critical part of a kid's development is to know what to push back against, right? Because it's a form of testing, right? That's part of their development. But anyway.
Amy, you had a question?
What was your question? I was gonna say, like, getting hung up on the liberal seems a little excessive, for my opinion, just because it's, you put throw into classical. You know, you're not calling it just a liberal arts education, you're calling it classical liberal arts education, and I feel like that kind of grounds it. You know,
We'll just change the school uniforms. Every school uniform's tie-dye now. Traditional education, but with tie-dye. I don't know what to do with this. This gets intriguing.
What?
Yeah. So talk to me about my guerrilla advertising techniques later.
It sounds like, and this is becoming more of a debate forum, so it can be a Socratic method right here and now. But it sounds like if you're stuck with the label of classical liberal arts, that's great. I'm past my time, I'm too late, and I support the school. But it also sounds like take the label away for a moment and you have some really great things.
Yeah.
Right? So just build from the bottom up instead of from top down. And like that's what we want to sell, right? So we talked about just a few bullets between like low tech, teacher led, Socratic method, debate, open mind. And let's start from there. And then what is that? Maybe they're related, but again, maybe too late.
Yeah, I think. No. We have not made any decision here, name changes or anything like that. So there's a lot of wisdom there, Tanya, and I think that's what we're trying to do, and I think we need just a concerted effort to, like, okay, now we know our 10 things, and let's go out and be evangelizing those. So, definitely. Anything else?
There was a parent that wanted to make more of a statement on her understanding of tonight. A classical integral education fosters critical thinking and creative problem solving by systematically developing an analytical mindset through broad interdisciplinary learning.
Now we need to.
Yes. There we go. Yeah, 100%. And one thing too, I'll just like, critical thinking, creative people, like, I love those. I personally try not to use them a lot because I think if my understanding of SPS and the literature that I read coming out of there is like, that's what they lead with, but then, but the substance is lacking. It's like, I feel so strongly about the foundation, setting those things to give kids actual things to chomp down on and chew on and to critically think about substance, but you can't make a creative thinker out of thin air. You have to give them stuff. So that is a byproduct, creative thinking, 100%, but it takes hard kind of writing, orthography work to get there. Yeah.
Quick two things. I did look up that school in Capitol Hill. They don't say how many zip codes they draw from. They said 48 churches. It's a Christian school.
So they're using this old Catholic school building next to Immaculate Conception. It's part of the Immaculate Conception Parish.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always like,
Yeah, and the second thing is, as I was leading a tour last week, and we walked into the second grade classroom. Miss Citron was not there. We have sub at the moment that we were there, and I asked the students what they were doing, and one of the boy students raised his hand, and he explained to me that they were peer reviewing each other's papers. So I clearly did not pay him to say that in the context of the tour, but that is what we are already doing. So I think you all know that that's what we're already doing here. I think we're just down to details and making sure that the staff is level set. But we would really let you know your thoughts and your opinions, and please do fill out the survey because that's really critical for us with OCS.
yeah, it's like a lot of these comments also super helpful, right? Like, it's just like, especially when we're trying to like simple part, but like this is helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Stacey,
What
last
was
question.
talked about last week? For students?
550.
Is there opportunity to go to
269.
grade?
That's a presentation for another evening. I will be happy to give that presentation now, but current capacity in this building without hiring new staff, I think is
What is it now?
180.
Fine.
But what the building could hold is different from like what we're staffed for.
But this building did have 760 kids,
Which is a little tight.
Okay, so on your way out, I'll put this in an email too, but take a screenshot. You don't have to take this right this instant. However, please take it by next Friday. And it's a fairly quick survey. It's a couple questions. If you're online, please take it too. I will email it to the whole school. But your feedback is super critical to this process. Thanks for your engagement. Thanks for asking good questions. Feel free to ping me if you'd like to chat more, go get a coffee and talk about it. That'd be awesome. Please go pick up your kids.